Hi guys, and welcome back. I'm really glad to have you here again because today we're diving into one of the most legendary tales of Greek mythology. The story of Perseus, the hero who faced gods, monsters, and destiny itself. From his miraculous birth to his battle with Medusa, the Gorgon whose gaze turned Mantis down, and his rescue of Andromeda from the sea monster. This is a journey filled with courage, tragedy, and divine power. So sit back, get comfortable, and let's step once more into the world of myth and legend. And hey, if you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep the journey going. Thank you. And now, let's begin the tales of Perseus, the hero who slew Medusa. Have fun and enjoy.
Part 1. The Prophecy of Doom. Long before Perseus became a hero, his story began with a prophecy, a whisper of fate that no mortal king could escape. In the kingdom of Argos, there ruled King Acrisius, a man rich in power but poor in peace. Though he had conquered enemies and built great walls, the one thing he longed for, a son to inherit his throne, was denied to him. And so, he journeyed to the Oracle of Delphi, seeking answers from the voice of the gods. But the oracle's words were not what he expected. She spoke in a trembling voice. "You will have no son, Acrisius, but your daughter will bear one, and that child will be your doom." The prophecy struck the king's heart like a blade. His blood turned cold. His beloved daughter Danae would one day give birth to his destroyer. In his fear, Acrisius did what all mortals do when they try to fight destiny. He built walls higher, locks stronger, and hearts colder. He commanded that Danae be sealed away in a bronze chamber deep beneath the earth, a prison of shining metal, where no man could ever reach her. There, beneath the dim flicker of oil lamps, she lived alone, her beauty fading into silence, her laughter swallowed by stone. But no wall, no prison, no mortal plan can keep out the will of the gods. For one night, a golden light descended from the heavens. A shower of glittering gold rained through the bronze ceiling. Not water, not fire, but divine light itself. It was Zeus, king of the gods, taking form not as a man, but as a stream of golden radiance. And in that moment of divine wonder, Danae was no longer alone. From that union of mortal and god, a child was conceived, Perseus, born of earth and sky, human and divine. When Acrisius discovered the infant in his daughter's arms, his fear became terror. He dared not kill the child, for that would bring the wrath of Zeus himself. But he could not let the boy live, either. So he chose a coward's cruelty. He ordered a great chest to be built, a coffin of wood and iron, and placed inside it his daughter and her newborn son. Sealed tight, the chest was cast into the roaring sea. As the waves crashed and thundered, Danae held the infant close to her breast, whispering prayers to any god who would listen. The sea raged, the winds howled, but the child did not cry, for fate had already chosen him. Through storm and darkness, the chest drifted across the endless waters, guided by unseen hands. Until one morning, as dawn broke across a calm horizon, it washed ashore upon a distant island, the island of Seriphos. And there, as the tide receded, a fisherman named Dictys found the chest. He opened it and beheld a woman and her child, alive, shining in the morning sun. Unknowingly, he had just pulled from the sea a destiny that would change the world. The child would grow to slay monsters, challenge kings, and defy the very limits of mortality. His name was Perseus, the son of Zeus and the storm, the boy who would one day face a nightmare born of stone and shadow. But for now, he was only a child, sleeping in his mother's arms, while the sea whispered of the fate waiting beyond the horizon. Part 2. The Island of Seriphos. The waves that once threatened to swallow them now cradled them to safety. When the wooden chest washed upon the shores of Seriphos, it was as if the sea itself had chosen where fate should next unfold. The fisherman Dictys, a humble man with calloused hands and a heart as open as the ocean, found the chest tangled in his nets. Expecting only driftwood or a catch of seaweed, he pried open the lid. And there, bathed in the golden light of dawn, lay a woman and her child, Danae and her infant son, Perseus. Dictys saw the fear in Danae, frail eyes, the exhaustion of days adrift, without food or rest. Yet even then, she clutched her child with the strength of a mother's love, unbroken by sea or storm. Moved by compassion, Dictys brought them into his home. He offered shelter, food, and kindness without question. And so the years passed peacefully. Perseus grew beneath the wide skies and salt winds of Seriphos, strong, curious, and noble of heart. Though he did not yet know of his divine father, there was something different in him, a spark of power, a quiet strength that seemed to sleep beneath his skin. He learned to fish beside Dictys, to climb the rocky cliffs, to respect the sea that had spared his life. For a time, it seemed the gods had granted mercy. But peace, in myth, is only the breath before the storm. For on that same island ruled King Polydectes, brother to the kind fisherman. Where Dictys was gentle, Polydectes was cruel, a man who measured worth only in wealth and power. And when he beheld Danae, radiant even after years of hardship, his heart turned dark with desire. He wanted her, not out of love, but possession. But Danae refused him. She would not marry the man who looked upon her as a prize. Her devotion was to her son and to the quiet life they had built. Polydectes' pride could not bear her rejection, nor could he openly harm her while Perseus lived to protect her. The boy, now grown into a man, stood tall and fearless. He was devoted to his mother and unafraid of kings. So Polydectes hatched a plan, one born not of courage but of deceit. He would rid himself of Perseus through cunning rather than battle. And he would use the very strength of the young hero, his pride, his sense of honor, as the weapon to destroy him. A great feast was declared, a celebration in honor of Polydectes' supposed marriage to another woman. Every man on the island was commanded to bring a gift fit for a king: gold, horses, jewels, treasures of the land and sea. But Perseus, who had little more than his courage, could offer none of these. The hall fell silent when the young man spoke, his voice clear and proud. "I have no horse, no gift of gold, but name your desire, my king, and I will bring it to you, whatever it may be." The room stirred. Polydectes smiled, the kind of smile that hides venom behind charm. "So bold, young Perseus," he said. "If you would bring me a gift above all others, bring me the head of Medusa, the Gorgon." Laughter rippled through the court. Even the bravest men paled at the name. For Medusa was no ordinary foe. She was a monster whose very gaze could turn flesh to stone. But Perseus did not laugh. He bowed his head and said simply, "Then I shall bring it." Thus was his fate sealed. A promise made not out of arrogance, but out of honor, and love for his mother, who looked upon him with fear and pride intertwined. As he left the hall, the waves crashed against the cliffs, as if the sea itself shuddered at what was to come. The boy who once drifted upon the ocean would now sail into legend, toward a destiny written in blood, stone, and the will of the gods. Part 3. The Deadly Quest. The moment Perseus spoke his vow before King Polydectes, the air in the hall seemed to still. The torches flickered as though the gods themselves had heard, and perhaps they had, for no mortal had ever returned from the lair of the Gorgons. They dwelled at the edge of the world, sisters born of ancient night, older than the Olympians, their hair a writhing nest of living serpents, their skin scaled like iron, their eyes burning with a power that could turn flesh to stone. To look upon them was to be frozen forever in terror, your last breath trapped in marble. Polydectes smiled with cruel satisfaction. He had set a task no man could survive. In his mind, Perseus was already dead. The sea would claim him once more, and Danae would be his to possess. But fate, and the will of Olympus, had other plans. Perseus left Seriphos that same night. No ship, no army, no map to guide him. Only the stubborn courage that burned within his chest. He prayed to the gods as he walked the shore, feeling the waves crash against his feet. And though he did not yet know it, his voice was heard across the heavens. From Olympus, Athena, goddess of wisdom and battle, watched him. And beside her, Hermes, swift messenger of the gods, smiled. For he saw in Perseus something rare among mortals, humility and resolve bound together by purpose. As the first light of dawn broke across the sea, a shimmer appeared before Perseus, and out of the air stepped the gods themselves. Athena's armor gleamed like moonlight on steel, her gray eyes deep with both compassion and command. Hermes stood beside her, golden staff in hand, the wind itself bending to his will. "Perseus," said Athena, her voice calm yet thunderous, "your courage has reached even Olympus. No man can face Medusa unaided, but you are no ordinary man. You are the son of Zeus, and destiny calls you to rise." Hermes smiled and drew from his side a curved blade, sharp as starlight. "Take this," he said, "the sickle of adamantine, forged to cut what no mortal hand could touch." Athena raised her hand and a polished bronze shield appeared, its surface so smooth it mirrored the heavens. "You must not look upon her directly," she warned. "Let this shield be your eyes, see through reflection, not gaze. For to meet her stare is to die." But even with divine weapons, Perseus still faced an impossible problem. He did not know where Medusa dwelled. The Gorgons' lair lay beyond the reach of maps, beyond even the mortal world. So Athena guided him further. "Seek the Grey sisters, ancient and terrible. They share one eye and one tooth among them. They alone know the path to the Gorgons." And with that, the gods vanished like mist in sunlight, leaving Perseus standing at the edge of the world, armed, blessed, but still mortal. He journeyed north through lands unseen by men. Mountains of ice and rivers of mist surrounded him. Days turned into weeks, and his strength began to fade. Yet still he pressed on, guided by whispers of divine purpose. At last, in a desolate cave where no birds sang and no light dared enter, he found the Grai, 3 ancient crones cloaked in shadow, their skin pale as bone, their hair white as cobwebs. They sat huddled together, passing a single milky eye between them, their voices rasping like dry leaves. They knew the secrets of the world, and Perseus knew he would have to take what he needed. Moving silently, he waited until the eye passed from one withered hand to another, and then struck like lightning. He seized the eye and held it away, the sister shrieking in blindness and rage. "Tell me where the Gorgons dwell," Perseus demanded, "and the eye will be returned." The air trembled with their fury, but they could not see, could not fight. At last, their cracked voices yielded. "Beyond the ocean's edge," they hissed, "where the sun never rises, there lies the land of death, the home of Medusa." Perseus kept his word. He placed the eye back into their trembling hands, and though they cursed him as he left, he did not look back. From there he traveled to the land of the nymphs of the north, who awaited him with gifts from the gods, the cap of Hades, granting invisibility, the winged sandals of Hermes, to soar above the earth and sea, and a magic satchel, unbreakable, to carry the head of the Gorgon once it was severed. Thus armed with divine steel, divine cunning, and the favor of Olympus, Perseus set his eyes westward toward the realm of monsters and shadows. The sea roared beneath him, the wind sang in his ears, and the stars above seemed to watch in silence. Every beat of his heart carried him closer to destiny, to the one creature whose gaze could end his life in an instant. He was no longer just the fisherman's son. He was the weapon of the gods, the storm sent to end the curse of Medusa. Part 4. The Gifts of the Gods. The world had grown quiet around Perseus, too quiet. Even the winds held their breath as he stepped through a land forgotten by time, where the sky was gray and the sun seemed afraid to shine. He had taken his first step into the realm of myth itself, where gods whispered through stone and fate walked beside him, unseen. He had the courage of youth, the blood of Zeus in his veins, but courage alone cannot face monsters born of night. And so, as Perseus journeyed deeper into the desolate lands of the north, help came from the heavens. From the clouds descended Hermes, swift-footed and smiling, his golden caduceus glowing faintly with divine light. Beside him walked Athena, her armor bright as the dawn, her gaze sharp as truth itself. "Perseus," said Hermes, his voice like the rush of wind through mountain passes, "you are walking a path that no mortal should tread, yet Olympus has chosen you. The fates are watching, and so are we." Athena stepped forward, calm and steady, her words cutting through the still air. "To slay the Gorgon, you will need more than strength. You must wield wisdom, stealth, and patience, for even a god would falter beneath her gaze." Perseus knelt, the sand cold beneath his knees. "I am ready," he said. "Tell me what I must do." And so they told him of the Grae, 3 ancient sisters, older than time, gray-haired from birth, who lived at the edge of the world where no stars shone. They shared one eye and one tooth among them, passing them back and forth as they muttered secrets of the universe. They alone knew where the nymphs of the north dwelled, the keepers of divine treasures that could arm a mortal for the impossible. "Find them," Athena commanded, her eyes fierce with purpose. "But beware their cunning. They will not give up their secrets freely." And with a nod from Hermes, the air around Perseus shimmered with golden light. "May the winds favor your steps," Hermes whispered, and vanished into mist. The path to the Grae was a nightmare of silence and fog. No bird dared fly, no beast dared breathe. The air was thick with old magic. At last he came upon them. 3 withered figures crouched over a pit of ash, whispering and giggling in the dark. Their skin was pale as moonlight, their hair hung in long gray tangles, and between their gnarled fingers passed a single milky white eye, glistening with strange life. They did not see him, for they were blind without it, and so, when the moment came, when one reached out and passed the eye toward another, Perseus moved like a shadow. His hand flashed forward, swift as a hawk, and the eye was gone. The sisters shrieked, clawing at the air. "Who dares?" they hissed. "Give it back! Thief! Mortal worm!" Perseus stood his ground, holding the trembling orb aloft. "I will return it," he said, his voice calm but iron-hard, "if you tell me where I may find the nymphs of the north." The Grae hissed and wailed, their empty sockets turned toward him. They whispered curses, promises, lies, but Perseus did not bend. At last, their defiance broke, and their voices fell to a trembling whisper. Beyond the frozen mountains they rasped, where the rivers run with silver light, the nymphs dwell. They hold the gifts of the gods, the tools of your doom." Perseus nodded once, tossing the eye back into their hands. The moment they caught it, they vanished into the shadows, their laughter echoing faintly behind him. Laughter that carried both fear and prophecy. He turned northward, guided now by starlight and divine instinct. And there, in a valley wrapped in endless snow, he found them, the nymphs of the north, radiant and eternal. Their hair shone like frost under moonlight, their eyes deep as still water. They spoke not with words, but with music, a song older than Olympus itself. From them, Perseus received the gifts of the gods. First, the winged sandals of Hermes, which granted him flight across the sky and sea. They shimmered faintly as he laced them to his feet, the air itself seeming to hum in response. Then, the mirrored shield of Athena, a disc of pure bronze polished so perfectly that it reflected the world like liquid light. With this, Athena's voice echoed in his mind, "You may look upon the Gorgon without meeting her gaze." Next came the curved blade of Hermes, forged from unbreakable adamantine, its edge sharp enough to sever even destiny itself. And finally, the helm of darkness, gift of Hades, lord of the underworld, a crown of shadow that rendered its wearer unseen by mortal, monster, or god. Each gift pulsed with silent power, as though the universe itself approved. Perseus felt the weight of fate settle on his shoulders, and for the first time, the enormity of his task truly sank in. He was no longer merely a man seeking to protect his mother. He had become the instrument of Olympus. As he took to the air, the winged sandals lifting him into the swirling clouds, a storm rolled across the horizon. The gods were watching. And in the far west, beyond the veil of mist and night, Medusa waited, her gaze sharp as death, her curse eternal. Perseus flew toward his destiny, bearing the gifts of gods and the will of men. And with every beat of his wings, the world below seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if this mortal would truly defy the impossible. Part 5. The Slaying of Medusa. In the farthest reaches of the known world, where the sea boiled and the sky met the black cliffs of night, Perseus descended upon the land of the Gorgons. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and scattered across the rocky plain stood countless statues, warriors, kings, beasts, all frozen in the final terror of their gaze. These were the victims of Medusa and her immortal sisters, Stheno and Euryale, whose faces no mortal could behold and live. Perseus, guided by Athena's wisdom and Hermes' steady voice, felt his heart thunder in his chest. The winged sandals bore him lightly above the ground, each movement silent, ghost-like. He dared not look directly ahead, only into the mirrored shield that gleamed like a fragment of the moon. In its reflection, he saw the monstrous sisters sleeping among the stone, their hair alive, writhing, hissing softly. Snakes tangled and twisted in restless dreams. Medusa lay apart from the others, her features both terrible and tragic. Once a woman of radiant beauty, she had been cursed by Athena for desecrating her temple. Now her face was a weapon, her eyes a death sentence. Yet in slumber, she seemed almost human, breathing, vulnerable, lost within the curse that had consumed her. Perseus steadied his hand. The curved blade of Hermes shimmered with divine light. Every heartbeat was a drum of fate. He crept closer, step by step, until the whispering serpents began to stir. One eye opened, glinting faintly with unnatural fire. With one swift motion, guided by all the gods' will, Perseus struck. The blade flashed, and in an instant, it was done. A soundless cry seemed to echo through the world as Medusa's head fell, her serpents thrashing violently in death. From her blood, dark and luminous, sprang two beings. Pegasus, the winged horse of the skies, and Chrysaor, the golden warrior, radiant as dawn. The earth trembled. The immortal sisters awoke, shrieking in grief and rage, their cries shaking the very stones. Perseus, unseen beneath the helm of darkness, seized the head, still dripping, still powerful, and rose into the air as the Gorgons clawed at the empty wind. And thus, in that haunted land beyond the edges of the world, Perseus achieved the impossible. He had slain the unkillable, defied fate itself, not through strength alone, but through courage, cunning, and the favor of the gods. Part 6. The Return Journey. With Medusa's head securely in his satchel, Perseus took to the skies, the wind roaring past him, whipping through his hair and around the winged sandals that carried him with the swiftness of Hermes himself. Beneath him, the desolate land of the Gorgons receded into darkness, but the air was not yet safe. The immortal sisters, Stheno and Uriel, awoke with eyes blazing like molten fire. Their shrieks tore through the cliffs, their serpentine hair twisting and striking at the air as though it could reach across the very heavens. Perseus felt the danger closing in, the relentless fury of creatures older than time itself, yet he was not unprepared. The Helm of Darkness, gift from Hades, rendered him invisible to mortal and monster alike. Shrouded in shadow, he flew past their grasp, the sisters, cries growing fainter as he gained distance. Still, he did not dare relax. For the pursuit of the gods, wrath is a constant, unseen force. The journey home tested him at every turn. He crossed vast oceans where storms brewed like the anger of Poseidon, fierce and unpredictable. High mountains rose like ancient sentinels, their peaks lost in the clouds. Dark forests stretched endlessly, hiding predators both natural and unnatural. Yet in each trial, Perseus relied on the gifts of the gods and his own growing wisdom. At one point, a tempest threatened to rip him from the skies. Lightning flashed and waves rose like mountains beneath him. The winged sandals faltered under the force of wind, but he angled himself with care, twisting and diving through the storm. The mirrored shield reflected the blinding light, protecting him from the deadly strikes that would have turned him to stone. In quieter moments, he glimpsed distant shores, villages, rivers, and mountains, and saw the ordinary world continue unaware of the hero in flight above them. Yet even these moments of calm carried the weight of vigilance. Every shadow could conceal danger. Every movement of the wind could hide a threat. Along the way, he encountered signs of other myths in motion, creatures wandering, towns in fear, and whispers of gods meddling in human affairs. Each encounter tested his cunning, using his shield to deceive, the curved blade to defend, and the helm to slip past the eyes of enemies. Perseus learned not only that courage and strength were vital, but patience, foresight, and restraint as well. Through valleys, over mountains, across oceans, the journey stretched endlessly, a test of mortal endurance guided by divine favor. And all the while, the image of Danae, his mother, waiting on the shores of Seriphos, gave him reason to press onward. Finally, as the sun rose over the distant horizon, Perseus neared the familiar coasts of his island home. The shadow of King Polydectes' palace loomed ahead, the heart of the danger that had set him on this quest. But Perseus was no longer the boy cast into the sea. He was a hero forged by gods, tempered by trials, carrying the head of Medusa and the certainty of destiny. The journey back was not merely a flight through space, but a passage through courage, cunning, and the blessings of Olympus. Every beat of his wings carried him closer to home, and to the confrontation that would define both his and his mother's fate. Part 7. The Rescue of Andromeda. As Perseus soared across the cerulean skies, the air thick with salt and the distant roar of waves, his eyes caught a sight that froze his blood. Far below, along the jagged cliffs of a remote coast, a young woman was bound to a rock. Her golden hair whipped violently in the wind, and her chains glimmered faintly in the sun. She was alone, yet surrounded by an atmosphere of despair so thick it seemed to shroud the entire bay. This was Andromeda, daughter of Seriphos and Cassiopeia, whose pride had angered the gods. Poseidon, enraged by her mother's boast that Andromeda surpassed the sea nymphs in beauty, had sent a monstrous sea creature to ravage the coast. And now, as a tribute to the wrathful god, Andromeda had been offered as a sacrifice, left to the mercy of the beast that stirred beneath the waves. Perseus felt the familiar surge of divine purpose flow through him. The winged sandals lifted him higher, closer to the bound princess, while the helm of darkness kept him hidden from the eyes of the sea monster below. The creature's shadow moved across the waves, immense, serpentine, and shimmering with scales like molten iron. Its roar split the wind, sending cries echoing across the cliffs. He approached cautiously, raising the mirrored shield. In its reflection, he saw the beast thrashing, its eyes glowing with hunger and rage, and he knew he had but a single chance to act. With Medusa's head securely in his satchel, he descended like a bolt of lightning, silent yet inexorably precise. The monster lunged, water exploding in furious waves, jaws snapping and coils thrashing. Perseus angled the head of Medusa carefully, reflecting its gaze through the shield until the deadly power touched the creature. For a heartbeat, the world seemed suspended. And then, in a moment, both terrifying and magnificent, the monster froze. Its immense body turned to solid stone, scales locked in eternal rigidity, jaws open in a silent roar that would never again echo through the sea. Perseus landed beside Andromeda, his presence sudden but gentle. She looked up, eyes wide with fear and awe, seeing not only the hero who had slain the monster, but also the boy who had carried divine favor into the impossible. "I am Perseus," he said, his voice steady yet kind. "You are free." With care, he loosened her chains, feeling the weight of both iron and fear lift from her shoulders. Andromeda stepped forward, trembling, yet standing tall in the first light of liberation. The wind seemed to celebrate, whistling through the cliffs and waves as though the very earth rejoiced in her rescue. Their eyes met, and in that silent moment, a bond formed, forged not only in courage and survival, but in the recognition of two lives intertwined by fate. Perseus, the hero who had defied death and monsters alike, and Andromeda, the mortal who had endured the wrath of gods and men. Together, they moved away from the stone carcass of the sea monster, toward the safety of the cliffs. The sea behind them gleamed under the rising sun, and for the first time in weeks, Perseus felt a moment of peace. But even in this triumph, he knew his journey was not yet complete. Challenges still awaited, and destiny would not rest. Yet in the rescue of Andromeda, the power of courage, divine guidance, and unyielding resolve shone brighter than ever, a testament to the heroism that Olympus itself had bestowed. Part 8. Vengeance and Justice. At last, Perseus returned to Seriphos, the island where his life had begun in exile and peril. The familiar cliffs rose from the sea, the salt air carrying memories of both fear and hope. But peace had not yet found the shores. His mother, Danae, lived in constant shadow beneath the tyrannical gaze of King Polydectes, a man whose obsession had turned her life into a prison. The people whispered of the king's cruelty, of the fear he wielded like a blade. Yet even in the darkest corners of the palace, Perseus, heart burned with the memory of divine purpose. He had faced death itself, wrestled with monsters and gods, and now he returned to deliver justice. He approached the palace silently, the winged sandals lifting him effortlessly above the guards, the helm of darkness concealing him from mortal eyes. The gates were closed, but they would not bar him. He entered the grand hall, where Polydectes sat among his court, laughing at his imagined security. The moment Perseus revealed himself, the hall fell silent. The tyrant's smirk faltered. In his hand, Perseus held the head of Medusa, its serpentine hair writhing faintly. The power of the Gorgon contained but undeniable. The air thickened, charged with the ancient magic of a gaze no mortal could survive. Polydectes' laughter turned to a cry of terror as Perseus raised the head. The court recoiled, their eyes wide with disbelief and fear. One glance, one fleeting reflection in the mirrored shield, and they were frozen, bodies transformed to stone, expressions of greed and cruelty eternally captured in marble. The palace trembled with the weight of divine justice, and in that moment Seriphos felt a breath of freedom it had not known in years. Perseus turned to his mother, lifting her arms from the chains of fear that had bound her life. Danae fell into his embrace, tears of relief and awe streaming down her face. Outside, the people emerged from their homes, seeing the once tyrannical palace now silent. The court petrified forever. Whispers spread across the island like wind. Justice had returned, and tyranny had been shattered. With the tyrant gone, Perseus appointed Dictys, the fisherman who had once saved him and his mother, as king. A man of humble courage and steady heart, Dictys ruled with fairness, bringing peace and prosperity back to Seriphos. Perseus and Danae finally walked freely along the shores where his life had begun, the waves sparkling like silver beneath the sun. The sea, which had once carried him to exile, had now borne him home, victorious, vindicated, and tempered by trials no mortal could endure. In this act of vengeance and justice, Perseus not only saved his mother but restored balance to the island, proving that courage, divine guidance, and unwavering resolve could overcome even the darkest oppression. Part 9. The Prophecy Fulfilled. After years of trials, triumphs, and heroic deeds, Perseus returned to the lands of Argos, the kingdom of his birth, where the sun-drenched plains and marble temples whispered of ancestors and destiny. Though he had conquered monsters, defied the gods, and restored justice to Seriphos, one shadow still lingered. The prophecy that had haunted his family since his mother, Danae, had been imprisoned in the bronze chest. The oracle had spoken with unyielding certainty. A son of Danae shall slay Acrisius, the king of Argos. A fate Perseus had sought to avoid, believing distance and time could bend destiny to his will. Yet the threads of fate are unbreakable, and the fates themselves weave with hands that mortal courage cannot resist. It was during the athletic games, festivals of strength and skill, that the moment arrived. Perseus, famed for his heroic prowess, had taken part in contests of running, javelin, and discus. The stadium echoed with cheers and songs of celebration, the people unaware that destiny crouched among them like a silent predator. As Perseus hurled the discus with all the strength of a demigod, the wind carried it across the arena. Its flight was true, majestic, and inevitable, a perfect arc of mortal skill meeting divine inevitability. Yet in a cruel twist, the discus veered ever so slightly, striking a figure in the crowd. That figure was Acrisius, Perseus' grandfather, the king whose fear of prophecy had set in motion the events that led to Danae's imprisonment and Perseus' miraculous birth. Time seemed to still as Acrisius fell, the cheers of the crowd turning to gasps of horror. Perseus rushed forward, but it was too late. The prophecy, once whispered in the halls of Delphi, had been fulfilled. The boy who had survived impossible odds, who had wrestled with monsters and gods, now faced the weight of tragedy, wrought not by malice, but by fate itself. The air was thick with grief, and even the gods seemed silent. Perseus, heart heavy, knelt beside his grandfather, offering prayers and tears, understanding at last the inescapable nature of destiny. Life, heroism, and death were threads in a tapestry far larger than any mortal could control. And so, with a heart tempered by triumphs and sorrows alike, Perseus carried on, bearing both glory and grief, knowing that the will of the gods and the decrees of fate are forces no mortal can ever evade. In that moment, he became more than a hero. He became a symbol of the delicate balance between courage and inevitability, a living testament that even the greatest of deeds cannot outrun destiny. Part 10. Legacy of Perseus. In the aftermath of trials, victories, and the tragic fulfillment of prophecy, Perseus and Andromeda found peace at last. Their love, forged in the fires of danger and divine intervention, became a beacon for mortals and immortals alike. Together, they built a life that honored courage, wisdom, and the gifts bestowed upon them by the gods, their bond a living testament to the power of heroism tempered with heart. The world remembered Perseus not merely as a slayer of monsters or a deliverer of justice, but as a hero whose journey intertwined mortal courage with the favor of Olympus. Each challenge he faced, from the deadly Gorgons to the wrath of tyrants and the perils of the sea, became a story told around fires and in temples, a tale to inspire awe and teach the delicate balance between fate, bravery, and cleverness. Even the gods themselves honored him. Athena, whose wisdom had guided him in the slaying of Medusa, ensured his deeds would be remembered. Hermes, fleet-footed and cunning, celebrated his mortal's use of divine gifts. Hades, helm of darkness, had shielded him in moments of dire peril, and the gods of Olympus looked upon Perseus as one who had navigated the threads of fate with skill and honor. In the heavens, Perseus and Andromeda were immortalized. Constellations bear their names, shining in the night sky for all eternity. Perseus wields his sword and shield among the stars, a warrior eternal, while Andromeda's figure remains a symbol of hope, resilience, and the reward that comes from courage in the face of insurmountable odds. Sailors, travelers, and storytellers look to these celestial markers as signs of divine favor, inspiration, and the enduring power of heroic action. Through the ages, Perseus became more than a hero. He became a symbol of the human spirit striving against the impossible, of destiny met with courage, and of the blessings that come when mortals walk alongside gods. His story reminds all who hear it that trials can be overcome, that justice can prevail, and that even the most unyielding hand of fate can be met with courage, wit, and heart. And so, the legacy of Perseus endures, in the constellations above, in the stories told across generations, and in the eternal memory of a hero who dared to face monsters, gods, and destiny itself, emerging triumphant, revered, and immortalized.
And that's it for today's story. The legend of Perseus, the hero who defied fate, defeated monsters, and earned his place among the stars. I hope you enjoyed this journey through one of Greek mythology's greatest tales. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share with others who love these ancient stories as much as you do. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time. Farewell, traveler, and see you in the next myth. Bye bye.